All right. So now we will be discussing, I mean, the sneak peek of the today's class is basically we will be starting with JavaScript. And in JavaScript, we'll just quickly get the introduction of what JavaScript is and, getting started to JavaScript basically. So how do we get started with JavaScript? I mean, how are we going to get started with JavaScript is basically, we are going to discuss some very basic things. Although I assume that all of you have gone through the basics of programming firstly, like, and have understood the concepts of variables, like what is data type, what is a syntax, and what are I mean, data types is already discussed. What are operators and some basic things like that. But still, we'll try to understand all the things with the perspective of JavaScript now, without focusing much upon the terms individually, like variable is required for what reasons, how can you imagine a variable working behind your scenes and things like that. We'll not go and discuss each terminologies very specifically. We'll just discuss them with the context of JavaScript now. And even before writing or discussing all these things, let me quickly briefly jot down the topics we will discuss in the class. The first thing that we will be discussing about, intro to JavaScript is obviously a point. Then history of JavaScript will try to HISTORI, history of JS we'll discuss. First of all, we'll have a brief discussion upon like how JavaScript has shaped till this point, and some relevant terms around it. Like ES6 was something which is relevant to JavaScript, right? Which we will take upon later. So we'll try to align these terms, right? We'll try to accumulate all these terms, and we'll try to form a sort of story so that you can imagine JavaScript to much more than just like a normal language, and you can have a clear picture of कि JavaScript से क्या क्या कर सकते हैं, what all is possible with JavaScript, and what is the actual nature of JavaScript. After that, we can talk about maybe variables. We can talk about variables. के बाद we can talk about data types in JavaScript. In data types, we can have a lot of discussion. The very first discussion we'll have upon undefined versus null. Then we can talk about primitive versus non-primitive, and a couple of things, right? So I'll just leave this discussion by writing data types now. The further discussion we'll take once we actually go to that point. And then we can talk about something like, we can talk about Chrome developer tools also. We'll try to discuss the console part, like how does it work? How can we write the code here? And how can we see the outcome of that? After that, we can also talk about, okay, I think we can talk about then type coercion and conversion. Coercion and conversion. Operators we already have talked about, but maybe we can still have a brief discussion about operators. And at last, we can say, how to add JS, how to use JS along. Something like this is a quick sneak peek of what we will be discussing in the today's class. I hope we don't have any further queries before we begin with the session. We are good, right? All right, perfect. Let's start by quickly, let me see, right, what all information you possess with JavaScript. So when I say JavaScript, right, what all comes to your mind, apart from just knowing that it is something which we use in web development part, what in your idea is JavaScript? Because I've seen many people understanding JavaScript just by having this in mind that, okay, this is something that we can use to create our web page or to add some features to our web page. That's it. There's no much more depth to JavaScript, or we cannot do anything apart from adding some dynamic features to JavaScript. I just want to know from you that what do you think is JavaScript capable of doing, or what in your sense is JavaScript? Okay, Kunal says it's a object-oriented programming-based language and a scripting language. Okay, act as a brain of the website. Okay, it is a scripting language, some people are saying. Make responsive pages. Okay, that's a slightly different answer that I've got. But anyways, language which powers the web. Okay. Toy language can be used for both servers and backend framework. Okay, again, a very crazy answer. Framework of HTML. Dynamic pages, we can use both. Okay, adds functionality, gives functionality. Efficient page. Okay. Server and client side. All right. So I believe we have a variety of answers now, and we can quickly see what JavaScript is and what JavaScript is not. Because I can sense there are some answers which are, which are I mean, there are some pointers which exactly is not cannot be considered as a right answer. I'll not point out right who have given them, but just to make sure that we don't have this misconception about JavaScript. Okay, few people are again saying DOM manipulation and use for DOM manipulation and things like that. This is also slightly incorrect here because JavaScript does not have DOM in its core sense. DOM is something which is possessed by browser only. We'll have a talk about it, right? But let's actually get into the discussion and then we will be able to clear out all of the points. So in my sense, I assume JavaScript to be, or I imagine JavaScript to be like a normal programming language. And when I say this term of programming language, I want to highly emphasize here again and again by making a point that it is a programming language in the very first term, right? It could be called as a scripting language. It could be called as this, that, and that, and that, and that. Some people were saying toy language. Everything is acceptable, but JavaScript, firstly, it's a programming language, right? So when I say it's a programming language, now you must be clear on some pointers, like you can do some logics, you can write some logics using this language, and you can get your particular task done by writing algorithms and by writing functions and things like that. What all we have discussed in the very first part of the course. We have discussed about things like, basics of programming, right? There is something called as flowchart, algorithms. We can write functions to get a particular task. There is arrays and things like that, right? So JavaScript, firstly, is a programming language, which many of the people might get a confusion that how can it be a programming language? We have seen JavaScript just like a language which can add features to our web page, right? I don't believe JavaScript is much more than that. Some people might have this perspective, but in true sense, firstly, it's a programming language. Then it is also a scripting language. It is also a dynamically typed language. It is also, some people are saying it is also object-oriented programming language. Again, that is a debatable point, that if it is exactly a programming, if it is exactly an object-oriented based programming or not. I'll not go into that direction right now, but yeah, there are certain pointers. So it is obviously a programming language. Second pointer was it is a scripting language. Other point I could say, it is a dynamically typed language. DYNAMI, it's dynamically typed language. And maybe one more point that I can say, maybe I can add an additional point like high level language. So these 3-4 pointers I have written right now, and this describes JavaScript like quite simply for me. And I would like to have a discussion around these pointers now. And then I'll take your question and then I'll take your suggestion, and we'll see what all were wrong answers and why they were wrong answers. So addressing the very first point, that it makes your page responsive. So responsivity is slightly different, although I'm assuming that by responsive you meant like you can do some actions and it will show you some functionality, or it can add some more features to it, right? If you mean responsiveness by those words, then you should rather be using things like add functionality or add dynamic behavior. Then that would be correct. Responsivity is slightly different thing. Responsivity means, as we have discussed in the last few classes, that in case your website is being opened into different web pages, into different screen sizes, if your website is able to accommodate itself according to different screen size, if it looks equally good on all the screens, then it could be called as a responsive website, right? So that is the first pointer. Second, someone was asking like it is it is something like a framework of HTML or framework of front end, anything like that. No, it is not a framework, not a library, not anything like that. It is just a pure programming language which can be used obviously to power the web, right? That was again a very powerful statement that someone made. Power the web, or someone was saying like it can be used for both front end and back end, right? That was also correct. We need to understand, right, that JavaScript is such a strong language that it can be considered as, like, as someone was saying, the power of the web, or something like, or the spine of the web, because it is used in front end also, it is used in back end also, and it is used at a very intensive scale. You cannot be completing web development unless and until you know JavaScript to the fullest. So knowing JavaScript is a must thing, right? Okay, so all of this is clear. I mean, all of the discussion, I hope, from your answers is clear. If dynamic pages are also clear. Now, about DOM manipulation, if someone was saying, let me quickly answer that for you. See, for the people who know what DOM manipulation is, they might be able to process it. But for the people who do not even know what is DOM manipulation and what is the use of it, just leave it for right now. We will talk about DOM manipulation later on. Then you will have a better idea. But for now, to answer those questions, DOM manipulation is something like that. You have maybe created a web page and you want to change the content of the web page directly using DOM manipulations. So this DOM interface is not a core part of JavaScript. It is something which is which is provided to you by the browser itself. If you want to use JavaScript to plainly write without having any other support of browser or any other any other environment right now, in that case, DOM is not considered to be a part of JavaScript. So that's why we cannot say that DOM JavaScript ka core part hai, and not like that. We'll talk about scripting just in a minute. What is the best updated to JavaScript documentation? Okay, so I cannot say ki exact documentation of JavaScript, but I have this one good thing which I always refer, JavaScript info. This one. This I believe it's a quick, what is it? It's a quick. You can even see it's last updated on October 15th. I guess today is October 15th. No, it's October 16th. Anyways, so it's like a unified resource from where you can learn a lot of things about JavaScript at one single place, and it's pretty, it's pretty, what do you say? It's pretty, it's pretty crisp in some sense. So you can refer to this documentation like throughout the course, and it will be a good. It will be a good go-to moment. It will be a good go-to web page for you, from where every resource is written like this way, and you can just directly click on the links and you can read about that. All right, now let me quickly explain all of the 4 pointers really quick. Right, I believe I have answered all of your question, and I've tried correcting the answers which were not correct. So let's dive into it. The first pointer, I don't need to even further explain it. It's a programming language, and we have also studied about HTML and CSS so far. So do you consider them to be a programming language? Do you consider if like HTML also belongs to the same category of programming language? I believe no one here will believe that HTML and CSS were also programming language. And how could you differentiate between them being a between them not being a programming language and between JavaScript being a programming language? Is obviously because you cannot do computation, you cannot do some logics using HTML and CSS. You can create structures barely, you can just create some styles using HTML and CSS. But when you say 10 plus 10, 10 plus 10, your HTML will never be able to compute it to 20. Neither will your CSS be able to do that, right? So for very same reason, yeah, those are markup language and style sheets, right? So that is the reason why JavaScript is a programming language and those are not a programming language. Second thing which I mentioned here is a scripting language. By scripting language, I mean that you have created a content, or there is an already created content using HTML or maybe using CSS, and you want to change that, you want to manipulate that. If you are able to do that, if you're capable of doing that, then that language is called as a scripting language. And since with JavaScript you can do that, you can manipulate the content of your HTML, CSS, etc., etc. That's why it is considered as a scripting language also. Scripting because you can just move around the content, you can just edit, manipulate the content. That's why it is a scripting language, right? I hope that point is also very, very clear. The third pointer here is it's a high level language, right? How and why it's a high level language? I mean, I hope you know this very basic things in programming that generally considered to be two different type of languages. One is a high level programming language and other is called as maybe low level or machine level programming languages. High level programming languages are those programming languages which are closer for human to interact with. For an example, if I start writing my code into zeros and ones or maybe into computer instructions, then it is not easily readable for human. That's why it will be a machine level language, or it will be something like a low level language. But since JavaScript the syntax that we follow, the type of keywords that we have are more relevant to human, are more inclined towards human centric languages. That's why it is considered to be a high level programming language. I hope that point was also making sense. So 3 pointers we have concluded, and I hope nobody have any complaints till this point. In case you have, you can quickly type that in the chat sections. And by the time, let's discuss this fourth point, because this is slightly interesting to note. And if you are coming from a language, or if you are coming from a background where all these languages like C++, C or Java was getting used, in that case, you might have seen that while denoting a variable, while denoting return type of a function, or while doing any major operations, you always need to tell the type of the data that you will be dealing with, right? Maybe I want to take an input. I have to tell what type of variable I want to create, what specific type of variable I want to create. Do I want to create an integer type? Do I want to create a double type? Or do I want to create something like a string type? That has to be specifically told before moving ahead. But for the languages like JavaScript, which is a classic example of dynamically typed languages, in that case, you don't need to tell the type of the data. The type of the data can be changed at the runtime. Means like that, suppose for an example, user has given an input and the input was given to be a string type. That is also fine. In the next round, maybe the user will give input as a number type. So that will also be fine, right? So it's just that the type of the data is not a, it's not a boulder here. It's not a problem here. That is called as your dynamically typed language. You don't need to tell the type of the data before doing any operation. Yes, right. So now I believe, no, DOM is not a language in case you are trying to ask. It's not a language, something like a feature that your browser is offering. We'll have a discussion upon DOM in the later classes in the same series. Okay, now this is also one more pointer, like it's a single threaded and synchronous language, right? See, what happens is with JavaScript, there comes a lot of adjectives, like someone will say it's a just-in-time compiled language. Someone will say, other words around it. I've tried making 3-4 simple pointers so that everyone can understand it. But there are 2 more pointers, right? Someone was asking about single threaded, and someone might even have this thing in mind about synchronous programming language. So I'll not go into the depth of what is single threaded and multi-threaded and what is asynchronous and synchronous. Let's quickly try to understand it from a layman perspective. That single threaded language means that while you have a process, suppose आपको एक task दिया है, I've given you a task. So you want to run this with one single flow, right? आप एक ही task को एक flow में run कर रहे हो and that's it, right? A multi-threaded language will mean that you'll break down the current task into multiple smaller tasks, into multiple smaller threads, and then you will evaluate them simultaneously, right? आप उनको एक साथ छोटे छोटे parts में divide करके उनको execute करोगे, and then you might combine the result and then you might get your answers. That is called as your multi-threaded languages. JavaScript is a single-threaded language. It has a single thread of execution. It does not break your task into multiple small threads to execute it eventually, right? It just directly execute it using one single thread. That's why it's called as a single-threaded language, right? And some more people, if they might be interested into knowing why is it called as a synchronous programming language and what exactly do we mean by a synchronous programming language in general, right? Let me explain that for you also. Let me explain that. Let me write synchronous, whatever is the spelling, right? Synchronous languages, and what is actually the synchronous language. So with synchronous language, suppose you have 3-4 lines of code. You have a code like this, line number 1, 2, 3, 4, etc., etc. And maybe at line number 2, there was a very heavy intensive operation. Generally, with heavy intensive operation, I don't mean that you are doing you are doing a very longer you are doing any longer mathematical calculation, like you are trying to multiply a very crazy number with a very crazy number. It is not considered to be a heavy computation. A heavy computation means that you are trying to do any task which is bound to have a delay, like you are trying to fetch some data from outside your system. Maybe you are trying to read a file and things like that. So all these type of operation which is going to take some time, in those operation, if your language is going to wait until this line completes and then it moves to the next line, this is called as your synchronous programming language. In simple sense, if you have one line to execute, once this line is getting executed, only once the lines is complete, then you move to the next line. मतलब एक बार एक line complete हो गई है, तभी आप next line पे जाओगे. That is called as your synchronous programming language. That एक line complete करने के बाद ही you will move to the next line. You'll not leave this execution in midway, or you'll not just try to execute the remaining lines until this line is getting processed. ऐसा नहीं है कि अगर ये line पे time लग रहा है तो you'll just keep on doing the other task, right? You'll have to wait unless and until this line is completed. That is called a synchronous language, right? Other thing which some people might have this in mind, that so we have read something about asynchronous JavaScript also. What is that and how does it differ from the synchronous? Because right now we've understood JavaScript to be a synchronous language. So about asynchronous, it's just that we do have some asynchronous operation in JavaScript. like reading a file, correcting the data from an outside system. So we handle them in a very specific manner. JavaScript does has a mechanism of handling them, but in true sense, JavaScript is a synchronous programming language, right? It works synchronously. Can you repeat? See, dynamic programming is dynamic part is very simple. It means that you don't need to tell the type of the data before working on it. You can just say you can just use some keywords like var, let, and const, and you don't need to specify. If it is a string, I have to write int. Oh, sorry, if it is an integer, I have to write int in front. If it is a double, I have to write double, or anything like that. You can just go around without even defining a data type. That's why we use var, let, and const. The more discussion about var, let, and const will definitely be done later, and we'll also be talking about how do you define variables here in the current. See, I am telling you, right, that the core nature of JavaScript is following a synchronous nature, but we do have situations like where asynchronous part of the JavaScript has to be handled, right? That JavaScript handles very smartly. Yes. Yeah, I have already addressed that point, that it also shows an asynchronous behavior. Right now, we are not here to discuss it because it's totally different. In order to understand the asynchronous behavior of JavaScript, we have to learn some internal working of JavaScript also, that how JavaScript manages a separate queue to maintain all the, track of your asynchronous code and things like that. That will be done later on. Yeah. ECMAScript. Yeah, we'll talk about ECMAScript also. See, HTML, it's a markup language. There's no sense of saying it's a asynchronous or a synchronous language. Used in a yep. I think okay. Maybe I thought you were trying to answer thing. I think you have copied this thing and you're trying to explain. You want me to explain? JavaScript is typically used in synchronous manner, but it also used as a asynchronous manner. That the first point I've already cleared, that it is typically a synchronous language only. एक line complete करके ही next line पे जाता है. But with certain scenarios, we can actually handle those asynchronous part of the code very smartly. We'll talk about it later. When used in a synchronous, take advantage of feature like callback. Again, too many foreign terms are written right now. You don't need to worry about async await. You don't need to worry about promises and callback right now. These will be taken on later on, and we'll definitely have a good discussion on that. These features allow JavaScript to run multiple languages. Okay. Oh no, I shouldn't say it's concurrency. I would say that it's basically right. It does not perform all your asynchronous task while you are performing your synchronous task, right? If I just have to give one example now, if I just have to say how JavaScript will manage those those pending tasks or those tasks which will take time, JavaScript will keep them aside, and once your normal tasks are done, then the JavaScript will execute that. So I don't think it's exactly a concurrency part. Concurrency would have been when, like, if the tasks are getting executed parallelly or something like that. Again, I'm not very clear on the concurrency part right now, but yeah, it should be something like that. Multi-threaded Java is a very cool example of multi-threading. I'm sure you must have done this in your colleges and something like perform and show an example where you can run multi-thread using JavaScript using Java. Sorry. We'll talk about async part later on, right? When we'll specifically talk about what do you say, APIs, we'll be talking about it. Yeah, multi-threading. I think Jayu has tried explaining it. That's really good. But now I believe we can go back to our original discussion. That was like the basics of JavaScript. And we have tried explaining JavaScript, or you have tried giving an essence of JavaScript with these 3-4 terms. I hope you'll just keep this in mind from now on, that JavaScript is not merely related to creating features to your web page. That's it, right? JavaScript is much more than that. And we can literally know almost we can be really good at web development part if we get good at JavaScript. It's sort of like the starting point, and it's also like a ending point also, because here and there, like, JavaScript is somehow maybe directly exposed or indirectly working behind the scenes with any framework that you'll be working, or maybe with any major tech stack that you'll be working, right? So that is a part. And one more assurance that I would like to give you from right now from this point is that we have given good amount of timing to the JavaScript series. You have given good amount of classes. You have given good amount of detailed discussion on certain pointers. So we will make sure that you love JavaScript. We'll make sure that all the important concepts are taught in a very real life sort of example and in a very demonstrative example. So please take these series very, very seriously, because unlike HTML and CSS, in which you have to just go through the properties and you just have to replicate them, it's not sort of much of a logical thing. Here in JavaScript part, we demand, this JavaScript demands you to pay attention. This JavaScript demands you to stay curious, so that you can question sort of things or the functionality which is happening in your code. And JavaScript is one of the most important part where all of your interviewers like to dig in. And it is also one of the very important, it's also one of the very common part where the candidates get rejected easily, because they do not have a core understanding of JavaScript. Doesn't matter if you're going for front end, if you're going for back end, the sort of the very first few minutes of the discussion that they will do will be on JavaScript. Doesn't matter if they are looking for Node.js developer, if they are looking for Spring Boot, if they are looking for this and that and that and that. JavaScript is considered to be like a must, which every developer, irrespective of front end or back end, should know. So please make sure that you will pay good attention to this current series. All right. Obviously, it's case sensitive. It's related to interpreter, because interpreter. See, interpreter, in some sense, we say that once a line is completed, then it only interprets your next line. That is also correct. But it's not exactly that your interpreter is getting used here, right? It's not that your JavaScript code exactly compiles using an interpreter. It's something else than that. Right. We will not, like, don't worry much about synchronous and asynchronous part. Someone was asking about it. That's why I've just answered it. But more about synchronous and asynchronous behavior we'll definitely discuss as we will move ahead with the course. Please make sure that, please keep this in mind, that this is just an introductory class. I want you to be well aware about natures of JavaScript, about knowing how JavaScript works, how it does not work, and going step by step to that points. So these points will definitely be covered, don't worry. All right. With that, we have got a basic introduction of JavaScript now, right? The second pointer that we have to discuss now, it's a history of JavaScript, that how it has shaped, and what were some key developments here. Just give me 1 second. Let me have a sip of water before I start that storytelling. All right. All right. So yeah, about JavaScript, right? Although we will not take this much of a history class, it's just like we'll try to discuss like how it has started and what all of the major development points here. So the basic thing about JavaScript and how it started was that in the late 1990s, when browsers were out there in the market and internet was accessible to general public, because before that internet was not accessible to everyone. It was very specific for the organization. It was very specific for very specific use cases. So after it came into public, into public use cases, browser thought of that, okay, HTML is there, CSS is there, maybe I think CSS was also not there, by the way, but yeah, HTML was there, but user was not able to do any sort of interactive behavior, right? So then at that point of time, Netscape Navigator thought of why not actually adding a feature to our web browsers that user can do some interactive behavior on our web pages. So then at that particular time, they hired an engineer, and they explained their thinking. Then they wanted them to come up with a language which can do some type of interactive behaviors. And that were the initial days of JavaScript getting shaped in, right? That he came up with a language which can do some dynamic behavior, which can add some functionality to your web pages. And in response to that, other browsers or their competitors, they have also tried reverse engineering that language, and then they came up with sort of similar functionality. Meaning that एक browser ने कुछ interactive behavior लाया, then other browser tried replicating it, tried reverse engineering those language, and they come up with their feature. So at that particular time, at that particular point of time, people started calling it as LiveScript. Some people started calling it as Mocha, right? And that was the initial few phases of JavaScript. And then when the web developers community realized that it is going difficult for learning different languages for different browser. Suppose you are a developer and you want to create a web page which will be displayed on Google Chrome, which will be displayed on maybe Safari, which will be displayed on maybe Mozilla Firefox, and you have to learn 3 different languages for both of the browsers. So how terrible will it be for you? So after that discussion, what happened was that there was a standardizing agency that came into the picture, that let's standardize this language and let's not keep specific language for specific browsers. And that was something like ECMA, right? So ECMA was the first thing that is coming into the picture now, and we'll have certain discussion around ECMA, ECMAScript, or ECMAScript version this, ECMAScript version that. So that was an organization that came into the picture, and then they standardized this languages, and then the existence of JavaScript came into picture fully, JavaScript, right, which is also termed as ECMAScript in some of the cases. You cannot directly say that JavaScript is equals to ECMAScript, ECMAScript is equal to JavaScript, because this is not correct. But in a very layman term, we can say that JavaScript also has another name, that is the ECMAScript, right? Sometimes people like to refer JavaScript by saying ECMAScript, right? It is similar, but not exactly the same, right? So this was the quick story of how JavaScript came into the picture. There were again multiple developments, like it was initially called as LiveScript, as I've told you, right? Then due to some marketing tactics, right, since Java was very popular that days, so they thought of why not adopting their name and just adding it to the language, so that it also gets popular very, very easily, right? So JavaScript, it's not because it is related to Java, or it is a successor of Java, or it is like a close sibling of Java. It is not like that. It is just that it was some sort of marketing tactic, you can say, or some sort of other reasons which company had, or which the community decided. That is a total different part, but not exactly because it's related to Java. So do not try to relate JavaScript with Java, assuming that it has Java in both of them, right? So that was about it. And one more thing, that since ECMA standardized this languages, standardized this particular language, so almost every year we have a new release of ECMAScript, and almost every year we have slightest modification in the JavaScript part, right? When I say this, people have this doubt that, okay, every year we have to learn new JavaScript, or every year the syntax will change, every year new functionality will add to the JavaScript. Generally, it's not a very major change in all the new versions. There is slight new thing that they have added, slight more advancement that they have added. But main thing that you need to keep in your mind is that JavaScript before 2015 version and JavaScript post 2015 versions were a very distinct changes in both of them, right? It's just that we say that we even talk about ES, or we even talk about JS before 2015, and we talk about them after 2015, which is ES6 or JS6, what you want to call it, right? So whenever we say that, okay, this is a ES6 syntax, or this got introduced to JavaScript after version 6, that means it is a relatively new feature, and we specifically want to learn that also. In most of the cases, we'll normally talk about JavaScript, or we'll talk about ECMAScript. We'll not specifically mention if it is ES6 or not, but for few features, we'll say that this was added in ES6, and that will be also important, right? Remaining features, like whatever you were working earlier, that was also working fine in ES6 also. But please make sure that whenever we use this term of ES6, or whenever we use these terminologies, you also pay close attention to that. So that is a quick summary and things like that, and a quick sneak peek about it. I hope you don't have any questions and any follow-ups to take. We are ready to move with the other pointers from here. Any other queries in case you have, feel free to ask. Yes, we are going to learn callbacks for sure. But that will come when we learn about functions in JavaScript. When we'll have a specific class on JavaScript functions, in that we'll have a discussion on callbacks. We'll talk about callbacks, we'll talk about promises, we'll talk about async await, like how to handle those callbacks, like how to handle those promises. Yes, exactly. Sure. Now I believe we can move to the next point, that is exactly about variables. Although variables we have already discussed in the basics of programming part, what exactly is a variable, I'm not going to go much about in a depth now. But how do we declare a variable in JavaScript? This is what I will talk about right now. How do we talk about, how do we declare variables in JavaScript? Is basically You don't need to write those data types, right? You already know this, that there is no concept of data type like this. I mean, no concept of data type while defining a variable, right? So I can say I can define a variable by writing var. I can say name maybe, or I can say variable one, and I can give any value to it. It could be 10, it could be it could be a string 10, it could be boolean, it could be any other thing, right? So that is how this thing is very, very important here. This is a keyword that we use to declare a variable, and this does not signify any data type, right? That is the first point. Second, and the coming question that you can have is that, okay, var is good, but I have seen people writing let, and I have seen people saying that you should be using let than using var. What is the discussion about it, right? Why are we not discussing it right now? So you can either use var, you can either use let, or you can either use const. Three of these are keywords to declare a variable. There is a difference between all of them, right? We can use let at certain, I mean, although let should be used mostly in most of the cases, var should not be used. But since we are starting out, we do not know the difference between let, var, and const now. So we will, for an example, we will go with var directly. After a few classes, when we'll get to know the difference between let, var, and const, then we can start using let or const in most of the cases. Right now, var is something that I will use in most of the scenarios. Perfect. Okay. If this is how how do we define variables in a programming language, and we have also done that earlier, right? Let's talk about data types. And the next question that you will have is, why exactly data types? We don't need data types, right? Because you've already said it is a dynamically typed language. We don't need to tell the type of the variable. We don't need to tell the type of the variable, obviously, but we do need to have a knowledge of what type of data that did the user have given us. Because maybe you are trying to fill a form, maybe you are trying to do some type of data validation. In that case, you are asking user to enter the phone number, and they have entered something like my name is Khan, and I'm not a terrorist, something like this. So this is obviously not a number, right? This is also this is obviously not a phone number. You cannot call on this number. So for that very reason, we do need to have the type of data so that we can validate that if the user have given this as an input, if this data belongs to a number category, if this data belongs to a string category, or if this data belongs to a specific so-and-so category. So for that very reason, we have data types. And the categorization of data type that we have is, it goes something like, if I'll write data types here, two main type of categorization we have here. The first categorization that we have is, it's a primitive type, Second type of categorization that we have, it's a non-primitive type. Non-primitive type. There is a very simple and straightforward discussion when we talk about primitive and a non-primitive one. Primitive means the simplest form of data type that exists in a language. Non-primitive means not exactly the simplest form. It is a combination of your primitive data type, something like that. It is sort of a advanced layer on top of your primitive types. In primitives, we have some type of, we have the following type of data. The first one is a string data type. Second one, we can say it's a number type. Third, we can say it's a Boolean type. Boolean. Then we can say it is a null. Null ke baad we can even say undefined. Then null undefined. We can also say begint is also there. Begint is also there. And then we also have something like symbol. So these 4, 5 data types, sorry, 6 hone chahiye, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, yeah. The 6 data types are the primitive data types that we have. In the non-primitive, we also have one which goes by the name of object. That is a very, very heavy topic. Obviously, we cannot discuss object in the current class. We have specific classes to discuss object. But at least we'll talk about the following data types that we have written here so that you can get a quick idea about it. Yeah. We'll talk about these following data types in the current class with some examples. And we'll try to understand, if I give you a type of data, you will be able to have an answer that, okay, it is of a string type, it is of a this type, or it is of a that type. I believe primitive and non-primitive ke beech ka difference at least must be clear to you. Non-primitive, yes. Arrays, arrays is something that also is a part of object, right? Right now, you might be thinking object is a different, array is a different data type. No, array is not a data type here. Array is again a format of object only, right? We'll talk about it how array is itself an object, but that will come obviously later. This is a broad categorization that we have right now. Perfect. Let's talk about string first of all, right? With string, it's very obvious that whatever you write, something like, you write uh, something like either you write a single, sorry, either you write a single character, right? Either you write a bunch of characters, both of them fall under the category of string, right? There is no category like character. So even if you write a single character, it will also come under a category of string. And just like unlike we have some things on languages like C++ and things, where you represent a single character by writing single quotes, and you represent a string by denoting double quotes. It does not work here. I mean, you can use whatever you want. Either you can use double quotes here, right? You can use double quotes to represent a single string, to represent a single character, or you can still use a single quote to use a character, to use a group of characters also, right? There is no confusion. There should be no confusion in doing that, right? Both of them works perfectly fine in string. Second thing we have, and the type that we have here is it's a number. In a number, all type of numbers like 9, obviously it's a standalone number, right? 0 point this, which is also a decimal type of number, which also falls under the category of number. We also have negative numbers like something like this. All of this falls under the category of number, right? There is no thing like float, double, ऐसा कुछ नहीं होता है. Everything which is in a numeric form, which falls under the category of number, right? After that, we have something like a Boolean. In Boolean, obviously, it's either true or a false, right? These two values represent a case of Boolean. Although we have certain things like truthy values, we have things like falsy values, which is a follow-on concept, right? We'll talk about what exactly is a truthy value. We'll talk about what exactly is a falsy value, right? In later on stages. Right now, we can just understand that either it's a true, either it's a false, and that is just a true value in some sense. This three things we have already discussed, right? We have discussed this in the previous basics of programming also. I believe there is no confusion, and I can move to some important part like null versus undefined, or maybe big int versus, not exactly versus, but what exactly is big int and what is a symbol, right? Okay, perfect. Now, there is a debate that goes around with null and undefined, because many people have this confusion of not exactly knowing what exact difference between null and undefined. Let me try to simplify it with fewer statement by just saying that whenever you define a variable and you just have not initialized it yet, that is a stage of undefined to your variable, right? Means that you have a variable like a, and you have just said var a. This is an undefined stage, and this does not represent a situation of null. This means the variable was defined, but the value was not given to it. That is what is an undefined stage. But you have done something like a equals to null. This is a case of null, where you have where you have explicitly given a value of empty. This is a situation of null. With simple example, I can say that if you are given with a form, अगर आपको किसी ने form दिया है, in the form you have left a field empty. Empty means you have not filled anything inside that. That is a case of undefined. But you have filled something inside it, and you want to mark it as null. That I have not forgot to fill it. I don't want to pass any value inside here, and I want to mark it as null. This is a case of null. Null represents a scenario where you want to represent an empty value. Undefined represents a scenario where you want to denote a scenario where value is not initialized yet, right? It is just like a placeholder for your variable. अगर आपका variable आपने define किया है, तो obviously it will not contain any garbage value. It will directly contain an undefined keyword. That is it. I hope the difference between undefined and null is very, very clear to you now. No, nan is something else. Nan is something that we'll talk about later. No, logend is not there. As per my knowledge, we don't have logend in the JavaScript. All right. Now I believe there is no confusion with understanding null and undefined now. Let's talk about this big int and symbol, and then I'll show you some example of example of string data type, number data type, boolean, and all these other data types. So what used to happen was that with JavaScript, right, with the later stages of JavaScript, we had insanely crazy amount of numbers, and that number was not able to accommodate something like I would try to, so I would try to validate it, range of big int in JavaScript. It goes something from 2 to the power 53, something like this, right? So if your number is larger than 2 to the power 53, it obviously cannot hit, it cannot be accommodated in your number category. So for that, what we have come up with is, we have come up with something called as big int, right? This big int wala part is capable of handling the numbers which are larger than in the range of 2 to the power 53, which is a very, very crazy number, right? This is exactly a big int. And how do you represent it? You just represent it by writing. You can say var, var n equals to something like this n. Although you say 10 is a very small number, why we have represented it with writing n? N represent that it is in a big int stage, right? And now this n can hold a number up till to the power 2 to the power 53 also. So just in case you want to represent this number in a big int format, you just have to write n, small n in front of it. It will become a big int, right? It is for very, very, very large numbers, which your numbers cannot even handle. After that, we have something called as a symbol, which is slightly less used, in JavaScript, by the way. And you might use it, but a very specific use case of symbol is there. It's not like something which is used in day-to-day basis. But still, let me explain it to you that symbol is something which can help you to get which can help you to get immutable and immutable and unique value every time you use it. It is something like एक ऐसा mechanism है जिससे आप immutable values और unique values हमेशा gather कर सकते हो. मतलब आप उस value को change नहीं कर सकते हो. You have given it a value, you cannot change it later on, right? The value of symbol, you cannot change it, and it is always be unique wherever you'll use it, with whatever you'll use it. It will always be a unique symbol, right? That is what is a symbol capable of doing. And how do you write it? You write var a equals to maybe symbol, and if you do this, this is how you have got a unique and immutable value. You'll not be able to see the value which symbol holds, right? आपको symbol के अंदर क्या value है, you'll not be able to see it, but it will always represent that if you have used one symbol at one point, it will always be unique. This is one symbol. This is one syntax of writing a symbol. Other thing that goes with symbol is that you can give a brief description to the symbol, that what symbol you have created here. You can say, a unique key, something like this, and it is not going to hold the value of a. मतलब आप a को print करोगे तो it will not show a unique key value, a unique key, but it will have a unique value which you can compare it with later on stages. We will show you some working examples of this both big int and this both symbol once we clear out the discussion of type of operator. एक बार हम type of operator के बारे में देखेंगे, then we will try to understand this part of like how is this symbol coming in and where can we see this in real life examples. But before doing that, I hope all these pointers like string, number, boolean, null, undefined, everything is clear from your side, and we can move to the next part. What is null value? Null value is it just means that it's an empty value. No. See, null obviously cannot be equals to undefined, and null. How are you saying that if null could be equals to undefined? Null cannot be equals to undefined. Okay, I'll explain this example of big int and symbol with an example, with a working example, because by theoretical example you won't get much. No, mat.random, it's a function. Symbol is a data type. And by the way, mat.random also does not guarantee you to give a random value every time, right? Or a unique value every time. It might give you a very similar value in a rarest moment of chance. Mat.example, no, I have already answered. It's not an example of a symbol. Yeah, now I'll try to explain all of this with a real life example. Okay. Just before I explain, just before I go to that part, I want you to know about one operator, which is type of operator, right? This type of operator is an operator which will tell you what is the type of the variable that you have given, what is the type of value that you have given in front of it. If I say ABC, it will obviously give what? It will obviously give a string to me because the type of this is a string, something like this. And where are we going to practice this? We are going to practice it in our console. This is the area that I will use to practice my JavaScript now. And this is also a part of in your in your agenda sheet about the Chrome developer tools, right? We have talked about it. We have talked about data types briefly. We are also talking about Chrome developer tools. I hope you know about this element section, you know about the style segment, computed segment, etc., etc. Today, we'll talk about this console segment. And this segment is responsible. I mean, in this segment, you can just write some part of JavaScript and you can execute it right away in the very next line. आप यहाँ कुछ JavaScript लिखो और वो next line में जाके execute हो जाएगा. This is what you can do using this console part. For an example, I want to write a basic mathematic operation like 10 plus 10, normal 10 plus 10. If I'll get 20, right? Because this is what is a obvious calculation that your JavaScript is doing. By the way, this is JavaScript which has executed it for you. I want to print some thing on my console, or maybe I want to show something as an alert using JavaScript. Although alert is not a core part of JavaScript, but it is supported in browsers. Hello world. So if I may write this line, and what it will do is it will show me a type of pop-up, and this is only possible using JavaScript. That you have seen that this is whatever we are writing here is a JavaScript, right? Now, if everything we are writing here is a JavaScript, let's see. If I define a variable like var a equals to 1000 maybe, and I want to print the value of a, I'll just write a, and then I'll hit enter. It will say 1000. Why is it saying 1000? Because I have given a value of 1000 to the variable a, and wherever I'll just print it, wherever I'll just evaluate it, it will evaluate to 1000. This is a part of JavaScript, and every line you'll write, it will execute in the very next line. एक line आप लिखोगे उसके next line में execute हो जाएगा. This is how compiler. This is how, not exactly compiler, but this is how a console area works in JavaScript in browser exactly, right? Okay. That being said, now let's do one simple thing. I have defined a variable a, right? Variable a equals to 1000. Let's try to check the type of variable a. I can check it by writing type of and then variable a. If I write this and if I hit enter, can you see something is coming? And what is this? This is number. Why this is a number? Because the type of this is a number. I hope you are getting my point. Okay, why is it getting printed undefined, right? So what happens in your console area is that every line it evaluates, right? मतलब हर line का evaluation it prints in the very next line. इस line को evaluate करेंगे तो जो इसका evaluation आएगा, it tries to print it in the next line. Since it is a definition of a variable, right? It is not, the evaluation of that cannot be anything. मतलब अगर आप यहाँ पे कुछ लिखते जिसका outcome आता होता, if you will write anything here which would give you an outcome, then the outcome would be printed in the next line. In this case, there is no outcome of this line. While you're declaring a variable, what could be outcome of declaring a variable? So that's why undefined was getting printed. If I'm writing something, obviously this has an evaluation. Iska kuch evaluation hoga, the evaluation of that will become a number. That's why it is getting printed here. So wherever you are doing things which does not evaluate directly to a thing, it will give you undefined in the very next line. Although you should not be bothered about it. मतलब इससे कोई आपको लेना देना अभी नहीं होना चाहिए, because in our JavaScript file we don't bother about getting undefined or not here. मतलब हर line JavaScript का ऐसे execute नहीं होता है. The complete outcome of that executes as a overall result. It's not like कि हर line का outcome next line में आएगा, then हर line का outcome next line में आएगा. It's not like that, right? I hope this question is also cleared, that why undefined was getting printed in the very next line. Next up, I wanted to create a variable. Maybe why to create another variable every time? Let's try to put new values here. I'll say this. What I have done, I have given a, I've given a value 10 to this variable a. And see, in this case, since we have not defined it, we have just reinitialized a value. That's why it has also tried printing the evaluation of it. A ka evaluation karke it has tried printing on the next line. But this is again not something that you need to worry about. The thing that you need to worry about is this now, that if I try to check the type of a, it will become a string now, because this is a string. This is a part of a string now, right? Similarly, if I'll try to pass a value of true here, and I'll check this, it gives a value of Boolean now, right? This is how it works. in defining the type of our variables. One more thing let's do. Let's say I want to create a big int number and I want to just represent it as a big int. So I can say this, and now you can see it represents a big int. If I'll give a very crazy number in integer category, it might break. It might break as in. कभी आपने देखा होगा अगर आपने Java या फिर अगर आपने C++ में काम किया, if you have worked with Java and C++, if the range of a number is let's assume the range of the integer category is 100. You can store maximum of 100 in your integer category. You cannot store more than 100 digit, a digit of 100 in your integer category. So what will happen is that the range of the number will just loop around and you might receive -100 as an outcome if you say 101. अगर आप 101 इनपुट दोगे तो मे बी रेंज ब्रेक हो जाएगी और माइनस में वो चीजें दिखाएगा as an output, right? That is something, it's very specific to Java at least, right? I've worked with Java and this happens very very frequently in Java. In case you want to read about this phenomena of this looping back to the ranges, you can go and find some articles which will tell you this. But right now, let's not go into looping around the range and something like that. Let's only focus upon this point that if integer has a limit of 2 to the power 53 and we want to give a number, in any case, we have a number which is larger than 2 to the power 53. Although I highly believe that in 99.99% cases, we won't have a number which is in the power of 2 to the power 53. But in case, in some cases, we might have. So for that cases, we are going to use a big int. And this is how it does look like. Perfect. Sure. If this is clear, let's see an example of symbol because that is very, that will be a really good example to see. For an example, I have a variable like a, and I want to create a symbol from here, something like this. I have already created it somewhere in the past in some other classes. So you can see that I want to create, I have a variable a and I want to give a unique yet immutable value to it. So I'll just do it. And if I'll try to print a, it will just show that it is a symbol for me. It will not print the value of a. It will just show that you have created a symbol. It will not print the value of symbol, right? Let's do one simple thing. Let's try to say that I will create a variable b now. And I'll give exact same message. I've not even changed the space. I've not even changed any message. I've just replaced the name of this. I have just replaced the name of a to a b variable. And let's see. It is also just coming the same way. If I just change it to b, although the message of both of them looks perfectly same, right? My first unique value, my first unique value, both of them looks exactly same. But when I try to compare both of them by saying if a equals to b, equals to b, if I do this, you'll see we are receiving false. You might be thinking of making a triple equals to, but still it will receive a false. Why? Because although we have given exact same symbol, we have given exact same values, but both of them will never be same. Any instance of symbol that you'll use will always yield a unique and immutable value to you. Are you getting my point about symbol? This is how it is used, right? And in case you might want to use it in some more practical examples, right now I have not thought of any example where we can use it. We'll talk about double equals to, triple equals to also, but it's very rarely used. By the way, it's not something which is used too frequently in day-to-day life. So you can just let it be in case. All right, so we have talked about all the data types. We have talked about some real life example of all those data types, like working examples of all those data types. And we have also talked about operators. Like we have talked about logical operators, relational operators, and arithmetic operators also in the basics of programming class. So that's why I'm not taking that discussion once again. I hope that is clear. There is one confusion which some people are having about double equals to and triple equals to. Let me quickly talk about it, like strictly or this part. Let's explain this with one good example that you have something like you have var a equals to 10 and var b equals to 20, or maybe 10 only, but this time 10 is written in the maybe let's start from this, var b equals to 10. So if I say a equals to b, what will I get? I will get true, right? Because obviously 10 equals to 10. What will happen if I add a third equals to here? This will still give me a true, right? That is fine. But what if I do this? I say now variable b is equals to this now, and I try to do a double equals to. It's still receiving true. Why? Because double equals to only check the value of the both the variables, or the value of both the operands. Both the operands a and b has a value 10. That's why it has resulted in a true situation, right? But the type of both the values are not same, right? This is a numeric 10 and this is a string wala 10, or this is a yeah, this is a character wala 10, right? In that case, we should be using triple equals to, because triple equals to is a strict assignment. It's a strict equality check. Means that it will not only check your value, but it will also check the type of the value, nature of the value. The nature of the value was number and the nature of the value was a string. So that's why, since both of them didn't match, that's why we will receive a false error, right? I hope you have understood the concept of double equals to and triple equals to, right? How come means what? No, no, it's not about ASCII value. It's basically about the nature of both of them, the type of both of them, right? This is a, it's just a number type, and this is just a string type. We are not talking about ASCII values right now. The type is different. See, it compares on based on the data types, right? This is a number data type. This is a string data type. Yeah. The double equals to only check for the value comparison. Triple equals to check for the value and type comparison also. Yes, exactly. Right. So that is about the this also. Can we talk in can we take input from user alert? Yeah. So this is also one thing that many people ask, like, can we take input? Can we print something to the console? Printing something to the console is very, very simple, right? It goes by something like console.log. We might have discussed it earlier. Uh, console.log will mean that whatever you'll write here will be printed on your console. This is your console. That's why it is getting printed, right? And again, the reason that it had printed undefined, because evaluation of that would be nothing. So that's why undefined was printed, right? Anyways, so yeah, console logs you can print, but you want to take an input, right? You obviously cannot take an input from the console right now, right? This is not possible with the JavaScript in the browsers. You can take an input from the browser ka prompt, something like a pop-up. To do that, you can say prompt, and in that you can say write your name here. And once you do it, this is the area from where you can take the input. And whatever input you have taken, it will return that as a result, right? So जो भी आप यहाँ पे लिखोगे, you can even collect it, and you can collect it with the something like this, var name equals to this. So you can store it in the name variable, and you can use it wherever you want to use it in your program. That is how input can be taken. So it converts a string into number and compares. It's not converting, it's just checking the type of both of the variables. If the type is same, then it's perfect. If not, then that's not. Yes, but it's just like that. To take input, we use yes. Sir, but a plus b will not result 20. Yes, this is also a type. I mean, this is also a case. That is our next topic, by the way, about type conversion and type coercion, right? I've written this here only, right? Let me clear it that this is done. We are about to discuss this point, which is type conversion and type coercion, right? This is really interesting because there are many simple questions. There are many output based questions, which comes very tricky at some point of time. That what will be the outcome of this? Why not will be the outcome of this will be 20? Why not? Why will it be 10 0 10 0? Let's see an example here, right? Let me, yeah, let me clear it out. And I believe we have variable a as 10 and variable b as, yeah. So if I say 10 plus All right. Yep. I know I was not audible. I had a issue with my router, and yeah, now I believe all of you can hear me. No. Your internet connection was fine. Um, is it fine with you all now? Yeah. I lost my internet for a second. Yep. Now we can continue. Sorry for the disturbance. Yeah. So as I was saying that if you write 10 plus 10, obviously you'll receive 20. But in our case, if you write something like this, a numeric 10 added with a string 10, in that case, you'll receive some sort of wrong message or some sort of wrong error, wrong outcome like this, right? Why is this happening and what is the reason behind it? So to understand this feature, to understand this thing, what we do here is generally we learn something about type conversion and type coercion. So what exactly is a type conversion and what exactly is a type coercion? So whenever you have a number, whenever you have a value like this, maybe we have a value like a. A is of a numeric type, right? I want to convert it to a string type. So how do I convert it to a string type? I can convert it to a string type by saying something like, I believe toString is a method, or maybe I can say parts that. Or maybe I have something like b, which is of a string type. I can convert it to a number by saying parts int, something like this, and it will turn out to be a number, right? You can see that b originally is a string, but by passing it with a function of parts int, it has become a number. Or not only this, you can simply say b, and you can even say this number, and you can say b. If you say, it will become a number, right? B, which was initially a string, has become a number now, right? This is a type conversion. Type conversion is always explicit. You'll obviously try to convert a type to a different type. That is a conversion that you're doing, right? This is very, very fine. But what about type coercion now? In type coercion, what happens is the conversion is happening, but you are not actually doing it by your own. Your compiler or your JavaScript is doing on its own. That is called as your type coercion, right? It is automatically getting converted. That we can see in this example of a plus b. If I write a plus b, what is happening is the result we are getting is 1010. Why we are getting 1010 is because the type of a, let me write type of a, sorry, type of a was a number. That's good. But type of b was a string, right? So when you have an operation where both the types are different, one type is a number and another type is a string, JavaScript will internally convert the number type to a string type so that we can do a common operation. But obviously, you cannot add a number to a string, right? You cannot add my age to my name. You cannot say Riddhi and maybe whatever is my age. For an example, let's say I'm for an example 18 years of age. Let's take a pseudo age and I'm 18 years of age, right? So I cannot say Riddhi 18 is my age, right? It does not make no sense. Or I cannot say my name is Riddhi 18, right? So for that very reason, JavaScript tries to make it meaningful by converting both to a common type. So a number is converted to a string, and when you convert 10 to a string part, it becomes 10. Another one was 10 only. It was like this. It became this 10 0. I mean 10 plus 10. Both of them are a string now. And when you do addition on string, it becomes concatenation. Like दोनों add हो जाते हैं, they fuse together to make something like this, right? That's why you were receiving 1010 as an output. See, why didn't it get converted to a number? It's something which JavaScript decide, right? Generally, again, there are some rules, there are some situation which happens. Like whenever we have a addition operation, whenever we have a concatenation, and we have a string type, we have a number type, JavaScript always prefers to convert your number to a string, and so that it can perform a common operation. Obviously, आप अगर एक नंबर एक स्ट्रिंग है, think of it very logically, एक नंबर एक स्ट्रिंग है, right? आप अगर नंबर को अगर आप स्ट्रिंग को नंबर में कन्वर्ट करते हो, इफ यू कन्वर्ट अ स्ट्रिंग टू अ नंबर, it might be a possibility that it would not make a reasonable result. But सारे numbers string में easily convert हो जाते हैं, and it always there is a valid operation of addition on strings. मतलब string पे add तो कभी भी हो सकता है ना, string पे आप रिद्धि के आगे कोई surname add कर दो, you can add my roll number with my room name, you can add my session, you can add my batch with my, with my score, anything that you can do, right? So that is something which JavaScript decides internally. We do have some question based, we do have some output based question on top of it. For that, I would recommend all of you to please go around the internet and try to search for some exercises where you can practice the type conversion and type coercion ke output based questions. I'm telling you some basic questions. I'm telling you some basic sort of examples where you can see all the different examples. Like for an example, I'll show you one other example which will be totally contrasting. I will do something like A minus B, and this time, can you predict what is going to be the output? If I say A minus B, what is going to be my outcome? A is still 10, A, B is still this 10 in string format. What is going to be my outcome? Will it be 1, 0 minus 1, 0? Will it be anything like that? What do you think is going to be the answer? The answer might be slightly different from what you are expecting. Yeah, it is going to be 0. Why will it become 0 now? Because the type of A was a number, the type of B was a string. How came it subtracted a numerical 10 from a from a string 10? The reason again is a type coercion, because whenever we do a subtraction operation, JavaScript always try to convert the string back to a number. अगर आप subtraction कर रहे हो, so since subtraction is not a valid operation on strings, आप string में से subtract नहीं कर सकते. You cannot say Riddhi minus Riddhi Suderi minus Suderi will become Riddhi. It's not like that, right? So for that very reason, it automatically tried to convert all the numbers back to the back to the all the string back to their numbers in case if it is possible. अगर possible है तो उसको convert कर देगा and you'll receive the result in this format. Let's take one example that you'll have B was your number, right? Which was equal to 10. So let's say I want to make it to something like ABC, which obviously is not at all convertible to a number. ABC cannot be converted directly to a number. ABC को आप number में convert कर सकते हो. String 10 को आप numeric 10 में कर सकते थे, but can you convert this into a number? The answer is no, you cannot convert it. So in this situations, what will happen if I write A minus B? Some people will say कुछ S का value ले लेगा, उसको multiply minus कुछ करके you'll receive the answer. In this case, you'll receive something like NaN. Yes, because in case your JavaScript was not successful in converting your number, in converting a string to a number, it will give you a result like this, which simply means the operation that you are trying to perform does not result into a number. And that is how it will work. Exactly like this. String ke case mein, it forms concatenation, and other part mein it forms a number. Right? That is the concept about type conversion and coercion. I obviously, there's a lot of things that you can do around with. There are a lot of questions that you can take from internet and take from blogs and articles and read and practice it more. Right? It's definitely one thing which you would like to have a discussion upon. Please go through the internet and try to. I think interview bit is a good source. Although in interview bit you'll find a lot of different and difficult questions based upon JavaScript, which you can ignore, but you can at least try those simple output based question based upon type coercion and type conversion. Or you can even just search for problems on type coercion, something like output based questions on type coercion and whatever is the spelling of coercion. Coercion in JS, something like this you'll find, and you'll find some articles. Yeah, I remember telling it to some other students also in some other classes. Yeah, you'll find some simple types questions from here, and you can have a quick go through around it. Right, it's just a good thing that you can try on your own time. It's not obviously difficult, इसमें कुछ ऐसा difficult कुछ नहीं है, but it's just that it will take some time for you to practice it. Yeah, you'll find it. I mean, I'm just randomly sharing some links, whatever comes first, whatever comes on top. You can even have your own research work, and you can find some resources from there. Yeah. So that brings us almost at the end of the class, where we have discussed all those things like type conversion, coercions, operators and etc. We still have to discuss upon how we add, HTML. How do we add JavaScript with HTML? I'm not taking this right now because at least few more classes that we will take from here, we will not use HTML alongside with it because we want to study JavaScript standalone. हम अभी JavaScript को standalone study करेंगे. Will not go into adding JavaScript to HTML right now. After a few classes of starting JavaScript standalone, we will then try to add JavaScript with HTML part, and then we'll have some fun around it. But that till this point, I believe that's that we can take later on also. Any more questions you have from the class? Any other questions or any other follow-up you want to ask? Please go ahead. Acha, difference between null and undefined. So in here, I might not have shown you an example of null. So अगर मान लो मैं a को, or maybe I'll define a variable x, var x, that's it. If I have defined it like this way, if I'll print value of x, it will give undefined. But what if I say var, I don't want to say that कि x को मैंने कुछ value define किया. I want to define it, but I want to define it empty. This is what I can do, and x will be null. That is the difference. मतलब अनडिफाइंड का मतलब ही है कि आपने वैल्यू को डिक्लेयर किया हुआ है बट उसमें वैल्यू दी नहीं है. नल का मतलब है कि आपने उसको एक्सप्लिसिटली बोला है कि मैं इसको एम्प्टी बनाना चाहता हूं. दिस इज इट. दैट्स हाउ इट वर्क्स. Yes, prompt has a return type and it returns the value that you have given. It generally returns the value in string format all the time. Can you store the outcome of a and b in variable and then use a type of? Yes, we can do that. We can say var c equals to a plus b and then we can say type of operator. See, parse keyword is used to just say अगर आपको कोई number को I mean whenever you want to do a conversion, आपको number format में चाहिए, आपको float format में चाहिए, आपको किसी और format में चाहिए, for that we use a parse int, parse that function. That obviously can be skipped right now because not necessarily we need that keyword. मतलब वो function हमें अभी चाहिए नहीं as such कुछ. But yes, there is an inbuilt function which you can use. To get an output 20 from 10 plus 10, we need to make. If you want to get 20, na, you need to either do the type conversion on your own. या तो आप parse int करके कर सकते हो उसको, या तो आप number वाला चीज जो मैंने आपको दिखाया था, right? You can wrap that with a number, and then it will become a, then it will become a 20. There is another way, like you can add an additional plus in front of it. एक और plus अगर आप space देके लगा दोगे तो वो उसको automatically number बना देता है. That is a different practice. We are not going to talk about it right now, but yes, there is again another option. Begin and simples are recent addition to your JavaScript. These are added later on, and these are not something which are very widely and very commonly used. That's why we have not. There would be definitely a situation of getting confused with symbol because it's not something which is used in day-to-day purpose. And these are also recent additions. Yes, both the functions parse int and number wala part perform the same operations. Yes. Okay. All right. Any other questions in case you have? Parse and converts string to number or string used to number to string. Parse int से आप strings को number में convert करा सकते हो. Yes. Yes. Exactly. These built-in functions. Yes, these are present in JavaScript, just like your Java. Number with space. Number with space. I didn't get it. 1 और 0 के बीच में space. I've not tried doing it. How would a number with a space look like? That's actually a good experiment. Okay, it does not appear to be a number to it. In order to have it a number, in order to behave like a number, you have to have a number without space. Okay, any other questions? Perfect. Oh, no, no, no. For parsing, na, no, no, no. So it's basically, I was saying that, देखो, you had a equals to a basic number, right? ऐसा होता था ना, and b was equal to this. Sorry, now b is this. So let's say b is again this. Right. So you were doing a plus b, and you were getting 1010. So I was saying that you can do a plus b, something like this. You can do, and you'll still get 20. There is a reason, right? It's just like a shortcut, or just like a different approach that you can use. That you can just enclose a number. You can just have a number, and you can just add a plus in front of it to behave it like a number. It's another way. You can choose to go with this way, or you can just totally ignore it, and this will also give you a numerical version. Yes, yes. Yeah. Cool. So that is all about JavaScript introduction. I hope all of you have understood it. And from the next onward classes, we will try to, we'll try to do this. We'll try to take this discussion forward, and we'll discuss much more things like functions and maybe other things on JavaScript, step by step, obviously. And we'll try to make sure that you'll get JavaScript to the fullest from this course. In syntax of JavaScript, we always have to write. No, no, it's not necessary. If you want to write semicolon, you can use it. Else, you can also skip it. Sir, one question, JS is used to add interactivity to the web page. Yes, as in what okay, as in what aspect? In what aspect? Like you want to click. Suppose you click on a button and you want a event to happen. You want a specific pop-up to come. You want maybe a timer to start running as soon as you as soon as you click on the button, or things like that. This is a type of interactivity that we are talking about. Again, Jayesh, is something, this adding plus is something that you can have a read on the internet, right? It's just like a thing that JavaScript performs internally. There is nothing logical here. There's such बहुत logical difference नहीं है. It's just that whenever it sees a plus in front of it, it says that okay, you must be a number, so I should take you as a number. ऐसा कुछ है. Okay. So that's about the class. I think I can conclude the class now.